I think every time I've taught this class, I have found that students strongly relate to the trust frame. And I think part of that is because the book is about schools in a way that the Bullman and Deal text is not directly about schools. But I think it's also because trust feels very close to us within our work in the workplace. And we can really visualize the importance of trust, especially when we are working with the public. So the trust frame points to how leadership and issues of leadership within an organization is fundamentally hinged on trust, issues of trust. And Shannon Moran argues that trust allows for constructive school environments. It requires a competence in doing one's job. It requires being reliable so that people know what to expect from you. And it also requires that you have skills for dealing with conflict. And conflict gets back to the power and political frame, where in that frame we learned that that conflict is inevitable. And so through the trust frame, if we can assume that conflict is inevitable, the trust frame would argue that leaders then have a responsibility to learn how to deal with conflict in effective ways, and that if they do not learn how to deal with conflict in effective ways, then they can never build trust and they can never be a strong leader as a result. They also point to how conflict avoidance does not work well, and neither does heavy-handedness. And I think oftentimes leaders fall into one of those two, I would say. So they really encourage leaders to develop a fruitful and proactive approach to dealing with conflict in a way that actually nails it on its head and rather than avoids it, but also in a way that respects parties and takes diverse opinions and takes into account. They also emphasize the ways in which it's really important as a leader to be vulnerable and to have confidence in other people, confidence in their benevolence, their good intentions, their honesty, and to start 101 level, to start with that assumption that all the workers in one's workplace have benevolence, have honesty, and are doing their work for the right reasons. And so if you start from that assumption, then the idea is that it can foster trust in ways that are really beneficial. And I think that's familiar to us when we think about the context of teaching, for example, or working with the public. We know that if we treat students as though they have something wrong with them, or if they have done something wrong, then we know that they are going to fulfill that expectation for us, right? As educators, we know that generally. So I think the same thing applies to leadership in the view of Shannon Moran. So I think, there's one additional thing that I'm just going to make one critique of the Shannon Moran text. And I think that it does a really good job, on the one hand, of pointing to one-on-one interactions and the ways in which trust is embedded in one-on-one interactions, whether that's between a school leader and a parent, or a teacher and a parent, or a teacher and a student. It talks about one-on-one interactions. But one critique I have of Shannon Moran is that I'm not sure that it really gets at the long-standing and historically situated nature of trust over time. So when we look at the historical legacies of organizations like schools, we see long histories of disenfranchisement of particular communities from schools, of particular populations feeling like they're surveilled by schools in ways that they find dangerous, frankly, thinking that the school might send CPS after their family, right? So that kind of surveillance in the work of schools is viewed as a dangerous realm. And I think that, again, that is situated in a historical legacy that extends across schooling as a whole organization. And so then when we look at individuals within that, people might assume that teachers, for example, or school leaders have particular kinds of intentions. So so I think we need to think carefully also about the role of things like institutional racism, sexism, discrimination against folks on the basis of their gender or their sexuality, and how do these things figure in also to thinking about trust and this historical legacy of schooling. So that's my critique of Shannon Moran, and you're welcome to take that up if you wish or not. But again, I do think we need to think about trust not just as a one-on-one interaction, but also as something that's historically situated.